find it. Great, thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for coming on a Tuesday night to hear about multifamily tax exemptions. Tonight we have with us Aaron Fonville and Andrew Bourne, who's with Burke. Aaron's with the Chelan County Assessors. Aaron will be doing a PowerPoint presentation, which is pulled up on the large screen right now. And I'll turn it over to her briefly. I just want to remind everybody, we have about 15 people or so right now on Zoom. Please go ahead and keep yourself muted during the presentation. After the presentation has ended, we'll open it up for questions and answers. We have quite a few people in attendance at City Hall as well as on Zoom. So if you could initially just go with your first question, and we'll give everybody an opportunity to ask at least one question, and then we'll come again for second questions or follow-up questions. As you go through the presentation, you may have questions, so feel free to write those down. And if you don't get the answer during the presentation or with someone else's question, please bring that up afterwards. With that, we hope that tonight's meeting will be about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then everybody can get to the election results and hearing how things are going out there in that section of the world. Again, thank you for coming. If you need something from this meeting afterwards, feel free to email me, Lilith Vestier, Community Development Director at the City Hall, and Andrea is there at City Hall, and you can ask her questions as well. All right, with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Aaron.
Thanks, Lil. So Karen asked me to come tonight to go over the multifamily tax exemption. And that's kind of a lot of words to say, so I'm probably just going to refer to as either MFTE or as exemption, just to make it clear on you. I know there's probably a lot of questions on how people qualify, how they'll do this. The MFTE programs are very complicated, so I'm just going to give you guys a brief overview of the program. I think we've already had some forums with the
We have public hearings. This is the first forum.
Time out. Is there a microphone for?
Can you hear me better if I sit up there? Is there a mic?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
So sit down. We're having
I don't know that they can hear you better, but the Zoom can hear you.
Yeah, and I'll try to speak up as long as I can. I'll pretend you're my children and you're in trouble. Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah. Sit wherever. Oh. Perfect, thank you. Okay. Is that better for on Zoom? And in the back, can you hear me?
Yep.
We
don't have a mic for you. Oh.
Yeah, so just for Zoom. So, okay, I'm gonna try to speak up as loud as I can. So basically what I'm really here to do is I'm going to give you a brief overview of the exemption, but I'm really here to talk about what the impacts are on adopting an MFTE. So if I can figure out how to do this. So first of all, just a little brief. How do I get rid of that?
I don't know.
Okay. And you guys have handouts too.
Yeah, I can go make more comments.
Sorry about the technology issues we're having tonight. For some reason, my PowerPoint wouldn't work on the side, so we'll just wing it, right? So just a brief history of the exemption. It's been around since 1995. It was first codified by our legislature under RCW 8414. The original focus of the program was to create economic development and creation of new multifamily housing, but over time it's kind of changed to be a tool to create affordable housing as part of the Growth Management Act. Prior to 2021, smaller cities like Leavenworth weren't able to adopt an MFTE, but in 2021, our legislature passed the engrossed Senate Bill 5287 that allowed a wider number of cities and counties to develop a 12-year program. Somebody emailed me earlier this afternoon, and they were asking me how many smaller jurisdictions have chosen to do MFTEs since 2021, and I couldn't find any smaller ones. Now, the city of Wenatchee has one, and I'm going to talk about theirs in a little bit, but so far, it doesn't seem like there's many smaller, like to the size of Leavenworth. You've got like Berrien and a lot of towns on the west side, but nothing much our size. Can you hear me in the back okay? Okay, perfect. Just wanted to check. So to be eligible for the exemption, the project must have at least 4 residential units, and it can be new construction, it can be a conversion of an existing structure or rehabilitation. The exemption only applies to the residential improvements for the project. And the exemption applies to the entire parcel and not just a portion of the property. There's been some misconceptions that if they are doing a 12-year, which has a 20%, that only the affordable housing units would receive an exemption. But how it works, for example, here, if they have 100 units and they're doing the 12-year, which requires 20% of those, if the 20 units are rented out as affordable housing under the guidelines for the area median income, then all 100 units receive the discount. I'm not used to doing a PDF instead of PowerPoint. So here, this is just helping out with pictures. This project here is one of the ones that Wenatchee has. It's called Three Feathers. It's right across from Lowe's down there on Walla Walla. So you may have driven past this. The bottom part of this project is all commercial. The upper part is residential. And so with the exemption, and this is what I'm here to talk to you guys about, is that on the exemption, the owner does not pay property taxes off any of the residential components. Now, they still do have to pay property taxes on the land and any of the commercial loans. So on this project here, the Three Feathers, they have a $2.8 million exemption that they don't have to pay taxes on that $2.8 million of assessed value. And this is the schematic drawing of Riverside 9. Riverside 9 is down there near this as well. It's one of the first multi-use, mixed-use apartment complexes, but they actually did not apply to the city for a multifamily exemption. So this one actually doesn't have it. I just use it as a great example to show you that mixed commercial use. So there's 3 types of MFT exemptions, and they're all based on years. There's the 8-year, which the city of Wenatchee uses, but the city of Leavenworth, from my understanding, is not considering this one. It does not create any affordable housing at all. It just creates housing. And the housing is all market rate rents that they're based off of. The 12-year, like I mentioned earlier, has at least 20% of the housing units that must be set aside for that low or moderate rate income, which I think the low is 80% of the AMI or that area median income. And then the moderate is, it's kind of confusing, it's 115% of the 80%. And then there's the 20-year where 25% of those have to be sold to low income. There's actually a great sheet that I hand out, and I don't know how we'll do it for Zoom, but there's a great side-by-side sheet that compares the 8-year, 12-year, and 20 that I found at the last minute. So I guess we'll pass that on to people later.
You have it as a handout, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's from the Department of Commerce's workbook.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
I have it in paper form for here. I can email it to you later that you can send out to people on Zoom. Does that work?
Well, we'll go through your presentation. I'll look for it. And then after your presentation, if I find it, we'll put it up.
Okay. Yeah, I had it on my flash drive, but I don't have it with me now. So some people ask about who has the oversight on the exemption. It's actually not the assessor's office. We're kind of, I was telling Sean earlier, we're the caboose in the train. So we're the after fact of it. Once the exemption is accepted and a final certificate is issued by the city, we're the ones that apply it onto the assessment rolls. But the oversight for these projects is actually the city themselves. They are required to have annual auditing process where the project would report to the city. And the city could actually set up what requirements they want. And you would have all the income information for the affordable units. And then what happens is the city submits that report to the Department of Commerce. Commerce is actually the oversight for the multifamily exemption, which when I was doing more research on it, I kind of felt odd because it's actually a property tax reduction is what it is. So I don't really quite understand why Commerce is the oversight when you would think Department of Revenue, who is the oversight for the assessor's office, would be doing it. And then I actually added the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee, JLARC. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them, but they do a lot of audit reviews on special programs and especially tax exemption programs. So sometimes they'll ask for information from our office or they'll ask information from the city as well, and they publish reports on it. So, and what happens if the project's in non-compliance? Depending on how the city sets up their MLTE, if the project's not in compliance, the city would cancel that exemption and notify our office, the assessor's office, and the owner would be billed. We would basically supplement the assessment rolls and we would take that exemption on. And they would be billed for every year that they were found not in compliance with the 20% penalty added. So they would get a revised tax statement. So the big reason why I'm here is to talk about the impacts of adopting an MFTE. The exemption is a great opportunity to get affordable housing, but it does come at a cost. And it comes at a cost to the taxpayers and to the taxing districts. So there's two ways that you can distribute this tax revenue impact. It can either be distributed by foregone tax revenues, and those are tax revenues that are not collected. And they will reduce the total revenue for the city and other taxing districts. This one is really interesting because it only takes care of the tax shift for the city themselves, because the city would take that exemption. And in this slide, in my presentation, I've used the exemption for a project at 25 million, because that's what I'm seeing down in Wenatchee for these bigger projects. We have a 142 unit project down there that has a $22 million reduction in taxes, or assessed value, I should say. So for foregoing tax revenues, the city would just take out whatever that amount that they approve for the exemption to the developer for the project, and that would come out of their levy request. So their levy budget would be just minus that. But that still doesn't eliminate the shift for all the other taxing districts that are within our tax code area in the city of Leavenworth. The other option is to shift those tax obligations to all the property owners within your tax code area, which would increase and it would offset it. So these are all the tax districts, and unfortunately this little bar that we can't figure out. Oh yeah, flood control is the last one on there. So it's not just the city that can be affected by the multifamily tax exemptions. State schools actually, we're just given a levy rate for the state. And so that one doesn't change at all, but the rest of them can change if there's an exemption applied to it. So I don't know if you've ever heard Gina Walter talk. She was our former Chelan County assessor. She's now the director of community development, but she always says that exemptions equal tax shifts. Oh, I just found out I can roll it. And this is the technical one of my office, so this is kind of funny. So there's two ways that the exemption affects the taxes. The first is the taxing district. And it affects the taxing district because as part of the levy calculation every year that our office does, and we're getting ready to do those, we're waiting for all the taxing districts to get their certified budget request in. We look at what the highest lawful levy that a taxing district can collect. And by state law, taxing districts, unless there's a voted in lid, they can only increase their budget from last year by 1%. As you probably have all noticed, you've got your assessed values in the mail 3 weeks ago. And a lot of people think that you can't increase your assessed values by 1%. The 1% applies to the taxing districts and what they can do in their levy rates. And part of the levy calculation is also the new construction. So how the MFTE affects us is that each taxing district would not get their new construction as part of their levy calculation, because in the law under RCW 8414, the new construction isn't considered, it's not added on until after the project is complete. So on a 12-year project, the taxing districts won't be able to include that new construction for that 12-year period. It can also reduce the levy limits tax district's bank capacity for a district, which means that if a district is not levying as much as they legally can, then it can actually affect that and lower it. So DMAP put together this whole wonderful spreadsheet, and it took my inner math nerdness to kind of understand it. I don't know how many of you know, but Dina she's a genius with spreadsheets, and she's really good at extrapolating out numbers and looking at it. So what she did, and she only did it for a couple of the taxing districts, was she looked at what the highest level levy is, what if you add your 1% in your new construction, and basically what the difference that will be over long term. And she brought it out to 2034. So just for these 3 taxing districts, which apparently I need to catch up in notes, you're looking at just in 2023, that's a revenue loss of about $42,000 that they would lose with the exemption, just in their levy calculation. If you bring it out to 2034, these are just the 4 she did. And from the other side, there's still a lot more taxing districts that are involved in the tax code area. But through 2034, which is the end of a 12-year exemption, you're looking at about $666,000 in revenue that the taxing districts could potentially lose. So, and what I mean by this is for levy rates, they're calculated based off of what the tax district budget is. So like earlier when I was talking about if the city chose to forgo revenue, that taxing district budget would just be minus the exemption. And then, so for the levy rate, it's the taxing district budget divided by the taxable assessed value of that taxing district times 1,000. So just to give you an example, let's say the city does approve that 25 million that I was using, and the city's budget is 500,000. The taxable value for the city is 500 million. So if you take that before the MFTE, you take the 500,000 divided by the 500 million times it by 1,000, you get a levy rate of about $1 per 1,000. And we take it out, in Chelan County, we take it out 10 decimals. Some counties only take it out 4. But if I apply a 25 million exemption, then you have your taxing district budget of 500,000 minus 475. So that levy rate goes up to $1.05 roughly, which on a $500,000 assessed home, that means that the property is paying about $26 more per year to the city. That's just for the city. That does not include all the other taxing districts that are involved. So it can add up pretty fast. And that's just for 1 year. That's an estimate for 1 year. This chart here is just to kind of give you an idea. These before levy rates here, those are based off of the 23 taxes that you guys paid. So before adding that $25 million exemption in, The tax rate is about $8.04 per thousand. Now, if you add in that 25 million, if you look at there, then the levy rate goes up by 4 cents, basically. Actually, 5 cents. I can't do my math tonight. And it's $27 on a $500,000 home. Doesn't seem like a lot when you think about it, but when you look at the city as a whole, your taxpayers are going to be paying $200,000, a little over $200,000 in just 1 year in tax revenue. And somebody asked me if I could tell them what it is per household. With assessed values and the way that we do property taxes in Washington State, you can't divide that by a household because not everybody's house is assessed at the exact same amount. So that's why I was using the 500,000. If you wanted to figure out by 100,000, you could just divide the 27 by 5 and figure out about $5 per 100,000 assessed value. So the city of Wenatchee is a great example of being able to see what the long-term impacts of the MFTE is. I've been with the assessor's office for 11 years now. And in that time, they have, so I started in 2012, March of 2012 with the assessor's office. And they had some that were old ones. They've had their MFTE since 2008. And they do have the 8-year and 12-year available in their city code. And so they've been doing this since 2008. They had a few, like the poolside apartments in Wenatchee that were rehab, Deaconess apartments back in the day before it sold, and now it's a mixed use complex, but that also had an exemption. These are the ones in 2017, they changed their residential target area, which is also called the RTA, which I don't know if Leavenworth has designated their residential target area. You guys are still kind of in the planning phases of doing the exemption, but by law, a city has to designate a residential target area where they want to put these projects and where they want more housing. And where they want more affordable housing. So in 2017, the city of Wenatchee actually changed their boundaries a little bit. In that time, they have, right now, all the projects in black are the ones that are approved. This year in and the year out, they're only approving the 8-year exemption right now. The 8-year has no requirements for affordable housing at all. All the units are rented. They have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, depending on what project it is. They're all rented at market rates. So this tells you by project, this how many units are there, what their exemption is. The year end is the assessment year 2020 for 21 taxes. So this project will come out for 27 for 28. Everything in blue, those are pending projects. So currently right now, they have these 4 projects, which is about $37 million that they're exempting in the city of Wenatchee, that the taxpayers are making up the difference in taxes. Because how exemptions work in Washington State is that the taxing districts can't lose their revenue. They have their budget base, so it comes off the assessed value, so it changes the levy rate. So, and then the blue ones are the ones that are pending. These are ones that when they do a project, they record basically it's an ordinance and an agreement that they do. It gives the developer 3 years to finish the project. Once the project's complete, they'll issue a final certificate of tax exemption with what's exempt and what's not. So the blue numbers, they're based off of our assessed values, which most of those assessed values don't have any of the project picked up yet. So we don't really actually know the true value of those 6 projects. As you can see, Wenatchee's done an amazing job getting enough units. The unfortunate thing is you've got 621 units by the end of this. That's going to exempt over $82 million in assessed value, but none of them are affordable housing. And as everybody knows, rental rates are up high. It's hard to afford a place to live in Chelan County. So having an affordable project really does matter. And I actually gave this presentation to the city council back in August for Wenatchee. And the mayor goes, well, it looks like we did our job of getting the housing we wanted. Maybe we should look at changing the program though. So they're actually looking at getting rid of their 8-year and going to a 12-year. So just to kind of give you an idea of how this actually works with the tax revenue and your property taxes is, so in the past 3 years, the city of Wenatchee has issued final certificates that has shifted the assessed value of 62.7 million. So that's the revenue. I just took that number and multiplied it by the levy rate for Wenatchee, and it's a little under 600,000 in tax revenue. So by 2025, with those other 6 projects, they'll have a total of 12 projects, but you're at about $174.6 million, which equals about 1.6 in tax revenue. So that means on a $500,000 home in Wenatchee, in 3 years, some of these owners have been paying $135 over that 3-year period. And over a 5-year period, they're paying $203 more, which when you think about it, doesn't seem like a lot of money out of your bank account. But for some people that are living, paycheck to paycheck, that could be groceries for a week or groceries for a month, depending on what your style is.
Erin, could you just kind of clarify that again? Like, that's kind of an important part. I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm just thinking.
What clarification?
Yeah, so that's like, well, on that slide right there. So you're saying that if it's worth $500,000, they're paying $135 more in
taxes to all the taxing districts. So how it's figured out is it's the difference. What I did was I took their existing levy rate and then I subtracted out the exemption amount of that for the 62.7, and then I figured out the new levy rate and times it by that amount. So basically it's just comparing if that value wasn't shifted in the levy rates.
So in the first 3 years, is that the increased total in the first 3 years, they're paying 135 in 3 years? Or is that each year of those 3 years?
That's for all 3 years.
All 3.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like a lot of money when you think about
Over
it.
3 years. But then you're saying after 5 years,
It keeps going up.
and so now they paid $203 more than they would have if they didn't have it shift.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I want to get.
Yeah, and
straight.
as you can see with city of Wenatchee, you've got projects constantly coming on. So every year, your exemption amount that you're exempting and shifting, it's a tax shift, is going to increase.
Right, because the more projects you take on,
Right.
more the shift increases.
Right, and how we have to handle it in our system is the projects that are approved, we actually go in and flat value the segments that are exempt. And so depending on what the assessed value is that year, and commercial does move differently than residential units do, but it could be even more of an exemption than that. And it all affects so your levy rate with an exemption is going to be a little bit higher than it would be without, because that money's got to come from somewhere.
Mhm.
So, and if you're exempting all the property, and Chelan County, we have like 85% of our land base is in public ownership of some sort. Now, we do get PILT payments from DNR and from the federal government and from Fish and Wildlife, but those PILT payments are such a small, like I do the one for DNR, it's like 11 grand. I spend 2 hours of my time for 11 grand a year. So the more exemptions you have, the smaller that tax base is, and the more the people that don't qualify for exemptions are going to pay in taxes.
Right.
And when your assessed values are already going up, because state law requires us to use sales from last year, and it doesn't matter who bought the property. If it's an arm's length transaction, we have to use that sale. So if somebody from Seattle comes over here and they pay $2 million for a house that we have valued at $800,000. I mean, that's a really drastic example,
Yeah.
but it's happening.
Mhm.
We have to use that cell, and unfortunately, there's nothing the assessor's office can do unless we have your details incorrect. And if we don't have enough cells that we can use in our analysis, we won't change your value for that year. But just because they're from the west side doesn't mean you can take that cell and toss it out. So there's so much stuff going on with all these exemptions, and that's why Sharon and I were talking on the phone and she asked me to come up here, was because it's really important that the people that pay the property taxes are involved in this decision process as well. Because it's a great idea to have affordable housing. But this affordable housing exemption that you're granting, once that 12-year period is over, the developer can actually, they have to give relocation assistance from my understanding, but the developer can actually change the market rents. They can take those 20 out of that 100 example that I gave you, and they can actually charge market rates after the 12 years is up. They don't get their tax exemption anymore.
Right.
So their property taxes are going to go up, but, and then they have to relocate. So you got to really weigh the pros and cons of the program. I mean, and unfortunately, and this is my personal opinion, and some people might not like it at all, but the city of Wenatchee, yeah, back in 2008, we didn't need housing. But now we need affordable housing, and their program hasn't created that. It's created, I mean, I have friends that are paying more for a 2-bedroom apartment than I'm paying for my house on a mortgage. So I don't know if this is the answer. I mean, that's for you guys to decide. I'm just here to kind of explain the ramifications of it. One final thought with the city of Wenatchee. And this is what I shared with their council, was they also have a historical exemption program, which you guys don't have that in the city of Leavenworth. Wenatchee is the only city that has this program. And what it is if somebody is in the historical district and they remodel their house and they apply to the historical preservation board in Wenatchee, they can get an exemption for 10 years for whatever amount that the city approves. And the only reason why I bring this into this conversation with the multifamily tax exemption is because on top of adding all that shift in the assessed value and in tax revenue to your property tax payers, you're also adding another exemption on top of it. So you remember that, I think it was like 62 or 67 mil, 62.7 mil now with the historical exemption add on to that. In the 3 years, that's $85 million that they've exempted, almost 800 in revenue. And by 2025, I project that they have shifted about $220.8 million in assessed value onto the taxpayers, which is about $2 million in tax revenue. So that's the end of my presentation. I've got some resources for you guys. There is some great information on Department of Commerce. There's great information on, I use MRSC all the time for any questions I have. And then there's also some really good information on affordability from the Alliance for Housing. And then there's some really great examples that you guys can actually use. And Andrew knows all the ins and outs. He's really, I mean, for consulting for Burke, he's been involved with commerce from day one. So he can really direct the city in how to make a program that's going to be successful and get you the affordable housing that you want with the strict requirements within the law, but you also need to understand the impacts of it as well. So that's my contact information. And I think, Bill, we can open up to questions.
Yeah, I'd like just to take a minute to,
A lot to absorb.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and many people on the participating today have heard about this program and have participated in other meetings. The city council has been hosting meetings on this, as well as public hearing, which has been continued to November 14th, 7 p.m. It'll probably start a little after 7 p.m., but that's the official time to be there. And so more questions can be address there, but the goal tonight is to address as many questions as possible about the program. And from what I heard you saying, the example that you provided with the city of Wenatchee and the cost impact for individual property owners at the 500,000 assessed value was just over $200 within a 5-year period.
Right.
Okay, so that equates to about $41 a year or less than $5 a month, less than $4 a month. But in any any case, the question that the city council is being asked is this a trade-off the council's willing to make as the decision body for taxpayers to have affordable housing? One of the things that we've talked about prior, and the reason our draft ordinance is written the way it is that the city council really wants to only focus on affordable housing. So that's why we have the 12-year program, not the 8. And then for our 20-year program, it's set up for home ownership only. They'll have to work with a land trust of some kind, most likely Upper Valley Men. And those programs require them to participate much longer than the 20-year program. If they partner with that program, they'll be in, at least with Upper Valley Men, they'd be in the program potentially 99 years or indefinitely is the thought process there. So that's our program. We have two options, a 12-year rental program and a 20 or indefinite ownership program. With those little tidbits about the program we've drafted, let's turn it over. Maybe we can go back and forth, give that a try. I'd like to be able to get somebody in person and then somebody on Zoom. If you'd like to participate and you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're present there and would like to start off with your question, please stand. Come up near the front by Aaron so we can see and hear you speak.
I speak to camera that over there. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, council members, for being here. I will say, I'm a little bit disappointed that the mayor or city administrator are not here to hear the voices of us, because we're ultimately the ones that are going to pay the bill. Dan and I live right behind City Hall on Whitman Street. We've been here for 20 years. And we're not going anyplace, but affordability is an issue. It's a huge issue. We have a huge family, and we have, but we have a lot to think about when it comes to adding more cost to our monthly budget. I'm 77, Dan's 76. We are okay financially, but so many people in this community are elderly. They're on a fixed income. They can't afford this. And my concern, not so much for Dan and I, but there are a lot of people that are going to be lost. And you're going to have affordable housing for people that need help. I get that. But I just think it's not serving our community well. And it makes me sad when I say that, you know, I'm concerned about affordable housing, but I just don't see it for this community. I had a pleasant conversation with Sharon Waters the other day, and I said, wow, what's going on here? Because nobody's talked to us about it. And You know, I mean, we have a great city. We have great council members. I was a council member in Maple Valley. I applaud everyone that is here working hard for the community. I totally understand where you're at. But please, please think very carefully about affordable housing, because I think you're going to really hurt this little community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have several council members here, and excuse me for keeping my video off. My connection was getting erratic. Tonight's meeting's more question and answer. The comments are very, very welcome. I want to make sure they get into the record. If you'd like to provide them in writing as well, we will share the recording with the council members and give a summary of tonight as well. So don't feel like you have to, but ideally we can use our experts' time tonight for question and answer. With that, Linda, you've raised your hand, and then we'll switch back to somebody who's present at the meeting.
Thank you. I've been confused by the 20-year program, and there hasn't been that much discussion on that. I'm trying to figure out, so a developer sells, let's say a developer builds 4 units, and he sells 3 of them at market rate and 1 as an affordable house. How does that developer get a 20-year tax exemption once he sells the 3 at market rate and the affordable house? How does he get the tax exemption for that?
Go ahead, Andrew.
I did not mean to clap, by the way. I just hit the wrong emoticon button. So the way that it's structured is that a 20-year MFTE needs to be done with an affordable housing organization. So something like Habitat for Humanity, and there's a requirement on the property where it always needs to be sold at affordable rates. Now, in terms of the exemption itself, you're right, the developer doesn't get it. It's the property owners that get it over the 20 years. And this is where it gets a little hairy, because essentially the developer would be selling it at a higher cost, at a higher price, but there would be that exemption in place. So your monthly payments would be the same. It's just that you'd be spending less on property taxes and more on like your home loan or something. So this is not as popular of an exemption in a lot of communities for a few reasons, but mainly because sometimes it's just hard for developers to kind of get across in advertising and sales materials what that actually means and what benefit it would have to folks going forward. But it is that benefit is still there. It's just for the homeowner and not for the developer.
So with the one affordable home, that would have to be bought by a Upper Valley Mend, and then they would lease the property and sell the home at an affordable rate.
Well, they would own the home. It's just that when you sell it, there are a few different instruments you can use, but essentially when they sell it, they get a certain amount of appreciation, but it needs to be sold to someone else who qualifies as under the income requirements. So it stays as affordable over the long term.
And that person that purchases the affordable home would have to qualify at the time of purchase, but
yeah,
then can live there as long as they want, no matter how much money they make over 20 years, say, or whatever.
Yeah, it's intended for affordable home ownership in the same way as like Habitat for Humanity or any other organization like that. And I'm using Habitat because I just have them on my mind, separate project. But it's kind of it's a challenge because it's kind of hard to go to somebody and say, well, you're making a little bit more money now you have to sell your house. It's really intended to make sure that it's accessible to people making a certain amount of money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Is there someone else in attendance who would like to stand up and ask a question?
Yeah. Yeah.
My name is Caroline Roger, and I'm also a resident here in Leavenworth on West Whitman Street.
Come on closer here so they can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
The camera's right up there, so that's what you're looking at.
Thank you.
Yep. I know, it's
That makes
deceiving.
sense now.
It's deceiving.
So I guess my particular question, I was looking at the Wenatchee list of units that have been built and are going to be approved. From that list, there's LLCs associated with them. What I saw from the LLCs was that about half of them were not local LLCs. I would say a few of them were in Kirkland and just generally outside the city.
Yeah.
So if I understand it correctly, the city is giving tax exemptions to these developers and there's no requirement for them to be in Wenatchee or doing anything in Wenatchee. I mean, obviously the units are in Wenatchee,
Right.
but these developers are living in Kirkland and realizing the benefits. And the citizens of Wenatchee are paying for these developers in Kirkland
Yep. You got
to
it.
get the tax breaks.
Exactly.
So most of those are owned by Widener Homes. If you look at the mailing address, it's Juanita Avenue in Kirkland.
Yeah.
Widener is a huge apartment complex developer. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then some of them are owned by a local construction company that use the LLC Eider Construction. I don't know if that name rings a bell. And then I think one of those are actually the Jacobys. They actually annexed their property into the city of Wenatchee to be able to do this multifamily exemption. So, but yeah, you're completely right. And the MFTE program doesn't stop whoever owns that property. They can live anywhere they want. But the taxpayers would be making up the difference of what that exemption that. So they're paying less in taxes, but everybody else is paying a lot more
Yeah.
to create
I
affordable.
think I just find that, I mean, significant from my being a resident of Leavenworth, and I just don't really want to subsidize some Kirkland-based developer. That's
Yeah.
probably my point, but thank you for explaining
Oh,
that.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else on Zoom like to ask a question?
Yes, I would, but I've lost Zoom and I can't put my hand up, so this is.
Well, go for it, Ann. We've got you.
Okay, so I am sorry that I couldn't really hear most of what Erin was saying. It looked, the
Oh.
slides were great, but I would get the buts and the ands when you paused, but so I'm just sort of going with it in a general way. So one of the things that it seemed like at the end, the discussion to one of the previous questions was that you gave us an example for a 3-year and then a 5-year period. But the main issue is that every year that more projects are likely to come online. And so the tax shift amount will be increasing. And as so for every project, and this it's perfectly structured to have a developer develop as many as possible, because all the units can be covered if they provide the minimum amount of affordable units. So it's beautifully structured for maximizing the number of projects, the number of units, which then becomes a much bigger burden on us. So we're paying, say at the 20 or 25%, we're paying the exemption on 75 or 80% of units that aren't affordable in the first place, it seems like. So I guess my question is, what I know the county has limits on raising property taxes, because property taxes, they relate to where people live and to the stability of the community, and to make sure that those houses are going to be solidly there and well taken care of and so on. And so when you mess around with property taxes, you're really in a whole different area than many other kinds of taxes. So the county has a limit of some kind of legal limit of 1% per year increase Otherwise, anything more than that has to be voted on by the voters, the residents. But this, I'm not sure that this that applies to this. So what if it does not? Then what would be the upper limit that we would need to bear and pay, especially since if we can't, an earlier speaking was well spoken about the elderly residents who are just sort of, going by, getting by as they can. What are the consequences if you cannot pay for, number one, your mortgage, number two, your property taxes, and number three, the other people's property taxes as part of the tax shift program?
Yeah, so first, a point of clarification, it isn't the county that has a limit on your levy. It is the state of Washington under the RCW 84, which is everything to do with property taxes. So, and that 1% is the taxing district's budget. It's their certified budget request that they cannot go up 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So how this exemption works is it comes off of the taxable assessed value for that taxing district. So in that one example I had, if the city has a budget of 500,000, but their taxable value is 500 million, and then you take off that 25 million, it changes the levy rate. So your levy rate goes up the more you take off of your taxable assessed value. And that's a statewide 1% rule, unless there's a voted ballot measure where the taxpayers agree to do a lid lift.
Right.
Generally, cities don't have that. You see that more so with fire districts because fire districts are limited to their $1.50 stat max. So, and that's one of the responsibilities of the assessor's office, is to make sure that every single taxing district is living within their levying capacity and that they're meeting those limits that I was talking about, how the exemption can affect that. Because we have to we have all these checks that we have to run in place before we certify our levies. And so we take that certified taxing district's budget, we take the assessed value to make sure that their request is more than 1% of last year, and that they're still not more than their highest lawful levy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a super complicated process. I've been there 11 years and I'm only barely beginning to understand that. Did that answer your question, Ann?
So, okay, so, I understand about to the extent that I'm, about the county, but so what's the upper limit to the taxes over the years when we see more projects coming on, and and some of them will be running for 12 and others for 20 years? What's the upper limit of, right now it seems somewhat open-ended, and that there's, since the ultimate result could be that people start losing their homes because they can't pay other people's taxes. That's why I'm asking, what are we asked to pay that has an upper limit on it?
Honestly, I don't think, unless Andrew knows differently, there really isn't an upper limit. It comes down to what your city approves. The city can control who they accept applications from and who they don't. Now the city of Leavenworth, city of Wenatchee has done things completely different. I was just using that so you guys could see the long-term impacts of it, because they've had a program for so long. But
yes, that's good.
Yeah, the more projects you have on, the more you're shifting taxes and the higher your levy rates are going to go. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes terrible sense. my concern is exactly what you said, that because for many people who are not here, who don't have the slightest idea that this is being considered by our city council members, that they may not be able to pay other people's property taxes, especially in the moderate range that the income goes up to 92,000. And let me just notice with amusement that many of us are nowhere near $92,000 that we are helping paying their property taxes.
Yeah.
At the other end for them is foreclosure for those who cannot pay.
So thanks, Anne, for your question and your comment. The city council will get to decide on each and every request. So they'll be evaluated as they come in. And the draft program does have, you know, a section where we're asking for them to provide us the analysis of what the impact's going to be and what the benefit's going to be. So each city council, as it comes to them, will be able to make those assessments. Andrew, you had your hand up. Let me defer to you for final comment on that question.
Erin answered like almost everything and
Yes.
stole my thunder. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
It's all good.
I did have a question for you though. What 92,000 were you referring to? I think it was Linda who was talking before.
Yeah, that was Anne.
Oh, and
Oh,
yeah.
what was I? That's 115% of the AMI for this county that it's based on. That's the highest maximum income that a person who could apply and qualify for the moderate affordability level.
Yeah, one thing to add about that is that the way that the state references low and moderate income is very messy. When you look at the numbers, and I can kind of well, I won't necessarily I have a few figures here, but I think the important point to make is that 115% of AMI is not really what you want to target for affordable housing. If you look at the numbers for what developers would be looking to charge, it would be around 1,800 to 1,900. Well, it would be about 1,500 to 1,600 for a one-bedroom apartment, and that's not necessarily again, the program's complex. There are a few other nuances to it, but the main point is you're right in that at 115%, it's not great. Like that's for rentals, that's not necessarily what you want to target. When you're getting down to like 80%, then you're getting, to much more affordable rents. So, that comment is well placed. I think that one thing you need to make sure of is that income level is set at a point where developers are going to want to take the incentive in exchange for providing affordable rent on one hand, but on the other, you're not giving away the farm. So
Yeah, and that's okay. So in Washington State, we have a senior exemption program. If you're 61 years or older and make a disposal income of $43,588, you may qualify for an exemption of property taxes. That is insane to me and I'm sure you guys are going to hear what I have to say on this one, but that's insane to me that we're looking at about affordable housing where somebody can get a low income house that makes way more than our seniors and can't qualify for the senior program. I think something needs to change with that. That doesn't seem right at all.
No.
And honestly, I'm floored hearing that, which makes me just want to reach out to Keith Gaynor and Mike Steele and Brad Hawkins too, because I mean, our seniors are struggling in Chelan County. They literally are struggling with what we're asking to do at the assessor's office and working at the assessor's office and having people call us constantly and come in. And I look at their assessed values and some people are assessed at $1 million and Leavenworth, over $1 million. And they've lived in their house for 40 years. And then we're asking them to pay more in property taxes to give somebody an affordable housing that makes more than what they would make, and they can't qualify for the senior program.
Yeah, Erin, we are talking about different age brackets and different segments of the community. So there are different tools. And
Sorry, I can't hear what you're saying, sorry.
Yeah, we're talking
about
about
my
different
soapbox, but wow.
No, we're talking about different tools for different segments of the population and
Right.
different age groups. So We'll try and stick with the age group and population that we're aiming for with the multifamily tax exemption. Certainly is room for the legislator to take up more to benefit seniors, that's for sure. We do have Kim and
The couple
I forget-
that.
yeah, is there
Yeah.
somebody else present who'd like to come first? Come up to the front first? Oh,
Shoot.
please, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you all. I wanted to go back to, I lived in Leavenworth for 4 years approximately. We live on Troll Street, so just a couple of blocks away. I wanted to go back to the RTA boundaries, kind of ran past that and I had a couple of questions about it. So that's residential target area, as I understand it, and that would be determined prior to, it sounded like,
Yeah, that,
implementing one of
and
these.
either Andrew
Yeah.
or Lilith can
Yeah.
answer that.
Yeah.
I think you guys already have a map of a RTA, don't you?
We do, it's in the draft code. I don't have it to pull it up at the moment, but it's all the commercial zones. So we're targeting this program to provide additional affordable housing in the commercial zones. That's the downtown commercial, the general commercial, and the tourist commercial. And then also the multifamily zones. So that's mostly Whitman, and it's the new Leavenworth Meadows housing apartments, but they have said they are not interested in participating in this program, so they wouldn't be asking for the exemption, but that's the locations for multifamily.
So my question would be, wouldn't that be something that the residents would want to be aware of, that the community would want to be aware of? I have not been to any prior meetings on the topic. We haven't been available, but, so this is my first time being here. But it seems as though the RTA information and this, didn't get the acronym wrong, MFTE information should be kind of happening hand in hand. And that in order to have a discussion about whether we want to be having these projects, we might want to know where in fact that was going to impact our community, first of all. And then secondly, I'm terribly disturbed by the fact that when we are expressing our concerns about the program, what I'm hearing from the city is statements that sound especially like we are already on track. So the city council will make the decision on each and every request. Has that been determined?
Mhm.
We are talking about a different topic and not senior affordability or, other concerns that we have in the room. It feels like a little bit of a railroading, like the decisions have been made, and this is not the first time we have all experienced that, I think. But it's not the first time I've experienced it, certainly. So, and making assumptions about what developers want to charge for these affordable units. So how do we know how much they plan to charge? I would imagine they plan to charge as much as they can to make it as beneficial as they can for themselves.
Could we clarify something there for you?
Yeah, please.
So first off, as far as what I understand, nothing's been done yet. No, there's no decisions that have been made at all. That's why we got the public discussion going. So there hasn't been any decision to accept anything yet. It's all public discussion. Get the questions answered. The other part is that once we do decide, if we do, then the council is able to target that level of income. Where the developer doesn't, he might not like what we target, but the council has a final say on where that AMI is going to fall. So it isn't the developer who decides that, because you're right, he would pick 115%.
Sure.
That doesn't gain us anything. So the council has the right and has the responsibility to target that AMI. So just those two things.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah.
And so on that same thread, are there projects or developers that are talking about being involved in this program already? Is that a conversation that's being had? with anybody in particular, even at the most basic level?
That would be a question for Lilith.
Yeah, that'd be a
Yeah.
little.
Yes, yes. And since it's been allowed to be implemented in small cities, I have gotten requests, hey, do you have this program? No, we don't have this program. So there have been 2 or 3 developers who have asked that question in the 2.5, 3 years that it's been an option for us to have the program. Had talked with the Leavenworth Meadows Apartments about whether they'd use such a program. The mayor had asked them directly if they would use it if it was adopted. They indicated initially, yes, they would, but as we've gotten closer to getting things done, they have to balance it out and look at what's been drafted. They're currently not interested in participating in the program. So right now we don't have anyone interested. The city council has indicated they'd like to have this tool in their toolbox for future developers. And that's why we are talking about it. So I hope that helps.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Kim was next. Kim?
I have a quick question. Can we get a map showing the taxing area? I know there's been talk about just the city limits. There's been talk about the UGA, and then beyond that, maybe the school district, the fire district. So do you have an actual map that shows who would have to opt or who's going to benefit or not benefit and what the taxing district is for this?
That's a hard one because each different taxing district has a different taxing district boundary. So you have the city of Leavenworth, but then you fire through that has a different one. And so when I was using that example, with how it shifts out, it just, whatever exemption the city approves, it comes off of their taxable assessed value. So each taxing district is affected by it, and then it's shifted in their levy rates. But I can send a map with the TCA that shows all the different district boundaries. It gets kind of convoluted when you have this many districts, because like Hospital One, they're huge. They go all the way to Stevens Pass and all the way up. Gosh, I made a map not too long ago, and it goes all the way up to like almost kind of kitty quarters along the Indiana Ridge a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's important for people to understand who this is going to affect. I mean, it can't be just a hypothetical. I think we need to understand before we vote on something, especially for people that can't even vote in Leavenworth elections. Is this going to affect them? Is it merit? Is it beyond? You said Stevens Pass. I mean, we need to understand what this is going to affect before we can make a decision on, is this going to work?
Yeah, and my contact information was on that slide, but I can just send it to Lilith. And Lilith, are you able, or Andrew, are you guys able to send it out to everybody that was on Zoom?
Well, we do
Or
need
you
people.
can post it
We can put it on the website.
or website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do need anybody interested in leaving their email address. That would be beneficial, or emailing me and letting me know you'd like more information. That would be beneficial as well.
So you do have the map that shows the area that would pay the tax shift.
Yeah, I actually do all the annexations at the assessor's office. So I'm the one that updates district boundaries as well. So yeah, I can actually do that in the morning when I get in.
It kind of feels to me, Erin, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, and Wenatchee's already done this program too, but it feels like you could almost say it's countywide in a lot of ways. Is that overstating?
Yeah, possibly. So
Okay.
because it's only those taxing districts that are within the city limits. But
Okay.
it does kind of, I guess, Yeah, it's just, the more I think about it, it affects that taxing district's accessible value. Because if that property lies within that taxing district, so it's more than just the property owners and the city limits of Leavenworth that are gonna be paying for it, because Fire 3, like we said, their district's, a lot larger, so their taxpayers are gonna be paying a little bit higher rate. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
So
Right.
this could potentially affect people up in Plain.
Yeah, no, most of Plain is in Fire 9. So it's only the taxing districts that incorporate the city limits in it.
So it's the hospital, it's the school
Right.
district. And the
There's the
school
cap-
district, does it affect the school? We've had that question before. I know Andrew's talked about that.
Yeah, and really, now it'll affect all the taxing districts, levy capacity, with their 1%, they'll lose that revenue because, every year you can increase your budget by 1%. Well, if you don't have that new construction added in there, then you're missing out on that new construction. It does get added in at the end of the year in 12 years. I was wondering who's going to remember in the assessor's office to add that back then, but I guess we'll figure that out then, right? But it affects everybody when you think about it, because, there's the flood control zone, there's the Chelan, which is the veterans, mental health, and the general. One of those slides that I had, which was the green chart, you can see where it doesn't affect the bigger taxing districts as much as it does the city. When you look at that slide, it's the city's levy rate, because cities have a smaller budget than the county. Fire districts have a smaller budget. One thing I didn't mention in that presentation with the city of Wenatchee, our fire district actually lost $67,000 in revenue last year. Wenatchee Fire did, because they went to their statutory max of 150. Well, that was 67 or $62 million that they didn't get to collect on. Because when they go to their statutory max of 150, it's not, their levy rate's not set based on their budget divided by their accessible value. So, yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for pointing that out, Pam.
Aaron, I have a
Yeah,
question.
absolutely.
What do you get?
Okay, yeah, who's next?
I think Dan, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't really.
Dan Capeland. I guess I have. It seems to me like in a number of situations, that we're taking a wheelbarrow of extra tax money and we're wheeling it over to the developer or to the landlord of a rental multiplex, because they can get the tax benefits. If it's somebody that owns the house, then yes, we're helping somebody that has lower income or moderate income. But if they're renting from a landlord that has 5 units, they only need to give 1 unit, as I understand it, 1 unit to a low income or moderate income, but they get the tax benefit of the entire amount. That means that the money that we're spending extra on taxes are not helping the low income person. That's what's happening as collateral, right?
Yeah.
We're actually giving the money to the entity that is getting the tax right. And I don't understand. And the other thing is, I think this is just a drop in the bucket. I mean, this is just such a small amount of good that it will do our community. I mean, we're not like Wenatchee. We don't have multi-million-dollar, buildings going out. And so the idea is, if you have 5 units and one unit is low income or moderate, that's just, it's nothing compared to, I mean, the amount of money we're talking about for taxpayers to subsidize this is just far more than I think the benefit. I absolutely agree with low income or at least affordable income, but I don't think this is the right vehicle to do it. I think there are better ways to do this. Okay.
Thank you so much. And the person who had raised their hand, put it down. I assume your question was answered.
That was Bruce.
Yeah, I think he's got the question answered. So is Nicholas next?
Yeah.
Sure, thank you. First, I want to thank the city council for taking on sort of like the exploration of all these different ideas. It seems like a very thankless job to even consider these. So thanks for that effort. One thing is like the numbers we were presented for Wenatchee are at a really different scale than I think what we're talking about for Leavenworth. Is that right? I mean, so I think those came out to a few $100 a year, you know, going up to 300 something, and that was based on Wenatchee projects.
Yeah, and the thing to think about with Wenatchee is they have a bigger budget and they have a bigger tax base than the city of Wenatchee is. So it doesn't affect their levy rates as drastically as it might affect the Leavenworth levy rates.
Right. It'd be really interesting to like have actual estimates based on, you know, even some rough hand waving of like how many people would pick these up, and how that would affect things, just as a comment to the city council. The other piece is that I really think anything like this needs to be permanently affordable. So sort of the 20-year community land trust sort of idea that was talked about earlier, I think makes a lot of sense. I totally agree that it's a hard one to explain what the benefits are potentially to developers and the purchasers. But it does create this permanently affordable house in the community that will live on. And that's the thing that we're struggling with, is having these houses, you know, just disappear when somebody moves on. So having permanently affordable, having ways of creating more permanently affordable housing with a one-time sort of payment really seems like the way to go.
And you see a lot more communities doing housing trusts. I mean, that still shifts it differently because the housing trusts are exempt from property taxes as well. But then again, you're getting more affordable units too. So I don't know if the city has talked about doing housing trusts. I mean, we have for Valley Men, that's very similar to that with ownership. The city of Wenatchee, their goal in the beginning of their multifamily exemption was really just to get housing. There wasn't, back in 2008, there wasn't that much available apartment housing. Now we have tons of units between Wenatchee and East Wenatchee as well. They're still not affordable, but you have more options. So.
Thank you for your comments. Is there somebody in the audience who would like to? Oh,
I have a question for Aaron.
Okay.
What percentage of Chelan County property owners are delinquent on their property taxes? Do you know?
That would be a great question to call Dave Griffiths, our county treasurer. Yeah, and I don't know if they have those numbers. I know that they just posted the properties that are being foreclosed on.
Right.
Because after 3 years of delinquency, they can go and foreclose on the property. But yeah, I'm not sure what percentage is. I can ask Dave to email me in the morning.
Because it's, I mean, we're being asked to create some sort of housing something as a
Right.
city and a council. But then we're also being asked to put a burden on everybody else's property. What I don't like is, I don't like when somebody says it's only $40.
Exactly.
I hate using the word only in front of money. It's $40, and then it's another $40, and it's a hospital district that needs money. Or so for me, I'm not convinced that this is the tool we need. I'm just not convinced. It hasn't been proven to me yet. From what I heard tonight from you, I'm not convinced that it's even applicable here because of the amount of land we don't have.
Right, and that's, I'm just here to get,
Right.
as a representative for the taxpayer.
And I'm
for the assessor's office. Yeah, and I'm the one that handles the exemptions
Right.
and I see every single exemption that comes through. And then when I get that call from that taxpayer going, hey, I can't afford my property taxes, you just raised my assessed value, and I try to put, well, that's not my side of the office, but
I know,
yeah. But
it's
yeah,
just a
you hear
tough
that.
Puzzle.
You
It's a
hear
very
it.
complex puzzle to.
And that's why, Dina, who was our assessor for 12 years prior to her leaving, always said that you always have to think when you're looking at approving exemptions, It's who pays for that exemption.
Yeah.
And it's not the property owner that pays for it, it's everybody else.
Yeah.
So,
All right, thank you so much. I know Denise, you have your hand up.
There you go, had to find my mute button. Yeah, just really quick. Am I understanding correctly? This is not something that we as the voters of the city or the county or anything get to vote on. This is a vote by city council. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. So, and is there a timeline of when you expect that vote to be coming up?
We have it drafted for the 14th. So the public hearing is continued till next week on the 14th. And the city council can continue it out further than that if they like, or they can call for a vote and see
Okay.
where things are.
So November 14th. So,
Yes.
oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was understood. That was my understanding, but I wasn't clear. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone in person who would like to ask a question?
Oh, Karen.
You don't have the time, number one, but just quickly, two of them that stick out to me is, I think that if I would almost be willing to bet money, although I'm not a gambler. If we surveyed the taxpayers in Wenatchee, city of Wenatchee, and just asked them if they know anything about a multifamily tax that they're paying, I would bet that the greatest majority would have no idea.
Yeah.
It's not a line item on your property taxes when you get them.
Yeah.
It's morphed into your property taxes. So I would be willing to guess they have no clue. And the other thing would be, Widener was interested and then allegedly he's not interested. And there's nothing that stopped him from being interested again if it's passed. And if he put in that 20% of units, we would be paying the property tax on the entire project, entire building. So for me, it's a no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember, Sharon, if they did make the request, it would come to city council. They only have the opportunity to make the request until the building permits are issued, which we expect to start issuing those this winter. So any case, just a clarification there. Barb has her hand up.
Hi, I also live on 212 Schultz. I live on 212 Schultz Street, and I'm a newly retired. So I kind of want to go back to address, Lilith, your statement of, will this program what we're putting in here targets different group? This is what we're trying to support. And I'm all for that, trying to support new families coming in and affordability. But the fact is what I'm hearing tonight, that program may impact the other type of family members, the retired people who contribute to this community in so many ways. And it is a financial a risk we have to take. And first of all, my question is, I looked into going to freezing my tax base based on income, and I was told that income of 42,000 is a statewide, it's mandated by state. Is that a correct statement?
Each county, so I can't remember when legislature changed it. But it used to only be like 30, oh gosh, what was it? 35,000 was the limit. And then they had, you have different levels you can qualify. Right now, each county has their own separate, and Department of Revenue does a bunch of income studies, and I don't know how they come up with the number, but Department of Revenue gives us the number. So right now for Chelan County, you've gotta live in your home for at least 6 months out of the year. You gotta be 61 or older, as long as you're turning 62 by the end of the year. And you've gotta have a disposable household income. So this is everybody in your house that lives there. Your disposable household income cannot be more than 43,588. Now, we did find out from legislature that it is going to go up for next year for 48,000. And Barb, did you come and meet with Anna in our office? Or did
No,
you talk?
I called a couple times about it, and they said next year try again because we may be able to increase up to the 48,000. But that's
Right.
just a question I had, who regulates that? And the other question I had is for Lilith, you seem like you have researched a lot of different communities who have put this program in place. How did they address supporting the retired limited income folks who will have to cover the tax for another population? I mean, did they address that population of people before they went forward and put in something to support a different population? I guess my concern is I feel a lot more comfortable about supporting this if I knew there were protections in place for those who are unlimited income, retired income, so they wouldn't have to carry an undue burden for this.
I don't have that research. Andrew, do you have any comment or response to that?
Well, I think that one of the things about this, and Aaron's touched on this, is that first of all, like I'm not here as a salesman for MFTE by any means. I'm here to make sure that everybody makes the right decision and the one that's best for them. But for a lot of communities, there hasn't been this discussion of tax shift. This is something that has only been recently discussed. Deanna Walter, who was the assessor in Chelan County that Aaron was talking about before, has brought this up a number of times, and it's starting to enter into the discussion, and in part because in the past, a lot of people just thought that the money just appeared, and that's not necessarily that fair. What I would say though is that there aren't very many actions that can be taken beyond the existing exemption that was discussed before to change property taxes because of the state constitution. Everything is charged at the same rate. So aside from those specific exemptions, you can't charge a different rate for lower income or seniors or anything like that. Like there needs to be a very specific exemption carved out by the state, and it's not something that the city can give. So, but I defer to Aaron on that one because you're the assessor on, well, you're immersed in the world of assessment, so.
Yeah, and just, like anything else, the more exemptions there are out there, you're shifting that tax base to anybody that doesn't qualify for an exemption. So you've always got to look at those. And going back to Sharon's point on the city of Wenatchee, yeah, they'd never had that conversation until August when I showed up, and there was 6 people in the audience, and like the mayor was there, and then 2 of their council members, and 1 was on Zoom. So I mean, 9 people heard what a tax shift city of Wenatchee has created, and the taxpayers have no clue that has been shifted upon them.
But I would also add though that when we're talking about tax shift, that applies to any case where there's a tax exemption. So like Aaron was saying, if there's a historic exemption, then that applies. If there's a senior exemption, then that applies as well. And the Department of Revenue has data about what's been exempted in each county, and it's not simply just MFTE where this applies. So
yeah, and that's what the assessor's office we're always looking at for the taxpayers. How does this new change our legislature wants to do? Bills, the assessor's office and even the treasurer's office we go to Olympia quite a bit to talk to them about any tax shifts that they want to do on the taxpayers. And if it's something that just isn't going to benefit, when the cost outweighs the benefit, you got to look at it. Now, the senior program, I will fight for the senior program every single day because, and actually, I am actually going to email our representatives because that whole conversation with the AMI and the senior income rate. The senior program, most of the time you talk to people and you tell them, because senior program does shift taxes too, because when you enter that program, you're frozen, your assessed value is frozen. So As long as you qualify for the senior program, your assessed value will never be more than the year that you qualified. And if for some reason, if this market ever quits being crazy and slows down and actually starts dropping, your assessed value, if it drops, you would pay that. But most people have no problem paying a little bit more in property taxes to keep our seniors in their homes. But when you're looking at these other exemptions, that's when it becomes more questionable. We had somebody in the audience that had a question.
Yep, go for it.
Well, my name is Jan Yalowitz and I live on Benton Street. And thank you so much, Erin. This information is enlightening. Sharon, thanks for having Erin come. And from what I'm hearing from you, Erin, is that this exemption, it's a shift and the burden is the property taxpayer. And you mentioned that we should probably be involved in decision-making about this. How is this council who is going to vote on this? How are you going to involve us in the decision-making? How are you going to get our input and incorporate that in your decision to adopt the MFTE?
Well, I would say, Jan, that's what we're doing right now. That's why we're having a public discussion.
Right, but is there going to be more than this? How many people really understand what this means? According to Erin, in the city of Wenatchee, people don't even get it. How are you going to make sure people really in this community understand that if the council adopts this, what's going to happen is we're going to have this shift and the property taxes are going to have to pay this much extra. How are you gonna make sure we're all aware of that?
Well, we have another public meeting on the 14th.
Right.
During the council meeting, and we can choose at that time to continue that. So we don't have to put it out for a vote. And that's what I'm hoping we're trying to do here is get everybody's input. So we make the proper decision. We don't have to vote on it next week or the week after.
Well, that is really good to hear because
yes,
one of the things that we kind of hear coming from the city, specifically from Lilith, is that you guys kind of want this in your toolbox.
we want a tool in our toolbox.
Right,
a tool.
We want a tool.
Right,
This is
but there is this message that's coming from them that maybe you're planning prematurely before you've made a decision you're going to adopt this. That's what we're hearing.
Well,
I
listen,
think we're all kind of hearing.
okay, Jan, let's clear this out. We don't have any agenda here. We do want to make a beachhead on affordable housing. And I think everybody in this room would like to have that happen. How do we do that? It is really hard. It's really hard given the market we've got, the lumber prices we got. So one way we go through this is we do have these discussions. I've got lots of doubts about this one, but if I don't process and have a discussion about it, I can't decide one way or the other. And I want my community to know exactly and understand this thing as best as I do. So getting people here, I've got an email list of 40 folks. I put this out and, you know, people just don't come to these things. And how do you get folks involved?
I totally understand how hard it is.
Yeah. So
I hope that before you make this decision, you make sure that you get enough public input, that you get a very strong picture from the community on whether or not this is something that they're going to support or that they want you to vote on to adopt.
right.
That's all I'm asking.
Right. And I just want to clarify. The first point was there hasn't been a pre-agenda here. We're just trying to go through the list of what might work, how it's worked other places. And so and every meeting we've learned something, just like we all attended that fest hall, that PRSA, I think we all learned something about that. So the only way to get there is to have public discussions and make sure that we connect with the community and that they show up. But there's no.
They show up and that you hear us.
Right.
We want you to hear us.
Well,
Really hear what we're saying.
yes, I totally agree. Yeah.
You know, up until today, when she explained that a developer comes in and he only puts 20% of the units as affordable, but exempts the whole, let's say the other 80 units. That's news to me today. The way it's been explained, it was not before That's not how I understood it. And
Yeah.
so out of the goodness of a developer's heart, I don't think so. If he gets an exemption and we pick up the tab, I think there needs to be more discussion. I think that, and we'll have a, we'll have a public meeting because it's already on the agenda. It was moved from last time to next one. And that we can continue that until we beat this thing to death
Okay.
or whatever. So I'm not in, for me personally, I'm not in any hurry to pass anything.
Yeah.
Up in this round. Right now, I'm not looking at this as anything that, it's a tool. I don't know if it's the right tool. I just can't.
I think just.
Thank you, Erin, so much.
Yeah.
Information is
For me.
really helpful.
Just to kind of jump in here for a second, I think that the reason why MFTE is being explored by different communities for affordable housing just has to be stated, because I think that, just to balance the benefits versus the cost here. The two major benefits to MFTE that I can, get out there up front. One of them is it's probably the most effective tool that cities have at providing an incentive for affordable housing. Aside from directly funding affordable housing, giving people giving people rent support or providing developers with land. This is the biggest financial incentive that communities can give. Other types of incentives like inclusionary zoning or a break on fees, is relatively small compared to this. The other thing is that if you have something like a direct support for affordable housing that the city manages, the city's going to have to manage that. The city's going to have to check to make sure that tenants meet affordable housing requirements. They'll need to go back and, whether it's Lilith or someone else will need to go through and, check people's income and make sure that they're eligible. The MFTE program puts that administrative cost and responsibility onto developers, or onto the landlords, I should say. They're the ones that need to check income. So it's a more effective way of reducing the city's overhead in trying to provide support. But this is not the only tool that's out there. There are other options that are available. There are other approaches. It's just that I just want to make sure that, as we're talking about this, there's clarity about why this is being proposed. It's not simply just a way of kind of grabbing money or anything like that. It's probably a way, it's a way of getting enough leverage to provide support. And if it's tuned right, then the incentive that you're providing is pretty equivalent to the break in rent that the folks in affordable housing are going to get. Sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt. So
No, Andrew, those are excellent points, and I think they help clarify why the state made this program available to all cities, whereas in the past it was only available to larger cities. It does have some benefits, particularly around if you wanted one or two or.
It's complicated.
Well, if you're breaking up.
very complicated. It's very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understated.
Erin, I have a question. Because Wenatchee's been at this for so long, do they have some way of assessing the actual effectiveness of these programs? Have you assessed it at all? Has it done?
Well, theirs does not have the affordable component at all. Their program, they've only been giving out that 8, which none of the units have to be affordable. They're all market rates.
So they don't have any of it.
Yeah. And the only reason why I brought them up as an example was I wanted to show you guys the long-term impact, because they've had so many projects and they keep adding to it over the years.
So we had Brewer has their hand up. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yeah, hi. My name's Jamie Holman. I live on Commercial Street. And I've been at these meetings and listened to them for months. And I've heard the terms workforce housing, affordable housing, low income housing. And my understanding is we had a real issue for workforce housing. And my problem with this program is, to clarify, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't have to have any proof that they work here, correct?
That's correct.
So
They are of a workforce income level, but we don't regulate where somebody works.
so that does not help our community with our workforce housing issues, correct?
That would be an opinion. I mean, because
I guess my issue is with the income level, how can you not have someone working remotely from somewhere else and not providing or contributing to our community?
Well,
I know we have a huge issue with workforce housing. So that's my issue with this program. I mean, along with the income level, we barely make over that level. And now we're going to have to pay for, developers' taxes. I mean, it's just, it just seems just counterproductive in my opinion. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone who participates in low-income housing is a valuable member of the community, regardless of whether they work inside the city limits, outside the city limits, or beyond. They not only are a member of the community living in our community, but they purchase things in the community, they participate in the community. If they have children, their children are in the community. So where they work is could be defined as less of the issue, as more providing the income, housing at that income level to diversify and make sure that we have a diverse community. So the city council will be weighing all of that. We are getting quite late. I would like to see if there's more questions in the audience. I saw a few people go. Also, I have a hand up on Zoom. So first start with the folks in the audience. Sharon?
You have a clarification. I guess I was under the impression that for the multifamily tax exemption, every single person who owns a property is a property taxpayer in the city of Leavenworth, regardless of their income, paid into this. And it sounded like at one point tonight, seniors didn't.
Oh,
Of a certain income didn't.
Aaron, didn't we talk about that they actually do, but it's at a lower rate because they're already exempt?
Right, so seniors, they, depending on what level they qualify, their value's frozen, and then on other levels, their value's actually lowered. And they're exempt from any excess levies. So schools, basically, they're exempt from
Bonds, yeah.
schools, bonds, that kind of stuff. But it's still, they would still be paid more because, like I mentioned earlier, is it shifts out in the levy rate. So the levy rate goes up for the taxing district because you have your budget divided by your taxable assessed value. So if you take 25 million off the rolls, that's not taxable anymore. So the seniors are affected by it as well.
Yeah, so if I made under the 42,000 or, below,
43.
I'm still paying the multifamily tax.
Right.
Okay.
Because it just gets shifted.
Okay, I thought maybe there had been a change from what I understood.
Yeah, no, and I
Okay,
think
thanks.
somebody had asked me that question a while ago about the seniors. It would be nice if it was that way, but that's not how the state law works at all. So.
There was someone back here. You had a question?
Yeah, Stephanie. Oh, it.
In person, Will.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Lilith.
So I also want to thank you for clarifying about that it would go through the whole project, because I asked that at the last two meetings specifically, and I kept getting sidestepped.
So thank you for clarifying that, yes, like if Widner, for example, took his 20%, covered it through the whole project would be.
Yeah, now a developer could request, but why would they, right? They could say, no, I only want to have these
Yeah.
affordable ones exempt. But under the law, as the whole residential complex, everything that's residential, as long as they hit that 20%, they qualify.
They could qualify, and that, I mean, what you're saying, he's off the board now, but who knows if he could turn around and be on the board again, and that looks to be possibly a $82 to $90 million assessment when that's all done. That's a huge, I mean, that's bigger than 25 million.
Yeah, I think Riverside 9, which is a bigger complex than what I've heard rumors of Widener proposing here in Leavenworth. Riverside 9, I believe, is assessed at 32 million. They don't have an exemption at all for the multifamily. Now the Riverside, they call it Riverside 600, but it's really the Pierce Street apartments. That one is about $21 million for those, and I can't remember. Yeah, that, and like I said earlier, every exemption city of Wenatchee has handed out is for just creating more housing. Sorry.
It's so interesting that, it's like, wow, and that Wenatchee people, residents don't realize that they're just paying for increased housing, not even for.
So that Pierce Street one that I mentioned, they call it the Park at Riverside. I've also kind of like all the different names. It's either the Park at Riverside, Riverside 600, or Pierce Street. It's 142 units that they have, and they do have restaurants in it as well that are commercial. Those are taxable. The restaurants would be commercial space. I think there's some businesses in it as well, and the land. But yeah, the last number I had was 21.6. That's exempt on that project.
With all the commercial as well, whereas ours is 368, units, and so yeah, it'd be a good project. So thank you for clarifying that. And the other thing that you had mentioned is, so even a development like my little house up here, if I decided in my backyard to build 3 ADUs and one of them make a low income rental, then my whole property tax would be, then I could get a multifamily tax extension for my whole property, my house and the 3 units.
Well, that would be if the city had a MFT program.
I mean,
it would be if they allowed that kind of. Because I don't know how they define the multifamily, if it has to be like a triplex or, I don't know if you can have individual detached units.
Andrew can talk to some of that, and go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, theoretically you can. I mean, they rewrote everything with 5287 so that, again, long story, but it doesn't need to be all 4 units in one building. It can be separated, but the way that the ordinance is currently written, it's a 4-unit building or more. So yeah, again, there are all these complexities to it. The short version is maybe not, but if you I mean, there are always ways to thread the needle if you're really keen, I guess. I don't know.
Well, the main thing too to keep in mind there is you're in the wrong zoning district.
Correct.
You'd have to be in commercial and multifamily. Yeah.
We'll be able to get those next. Okay, thank you.
Stephanie.
Good evening. This is actually Chief O'Brien, Kelly O'Brien with Stephanie.
Thank you.
Question. The voice doesn't match the picture, does it? Is there a copy of the draft proposal available?
Yes, it has been in the city council packet in the past, and it is in the packet for the 14th, which I think is coming out tomorrow. And then I can also email it.
If you could email me, that would be great. I have a commissioners meeting tomorrow night. I'd love to give them a copy of that.
Sounds good.
Also, just a question for council members. I know Sharon has, Councilman Waters has spoke on this a couple times at our meetings, but have any of the other emergency services, Cascade Medical, Fire District 3, the ambulance, have they been brought in on these discussions and how that will impact their taxing district?
I will check my notices and see. It seemed like to me initially when we talked about it, there was discussion that some districts wouldn't be impacted. And as we've dug into the question more, it's become more apparent that they could be impacted. So I'd have to check and see if I have sent it directly to them.
Yeah, I know with seeing Aaron's report there that Fire District 3 would be impacted quite a bit, and we'd like to give some opinions to council members on, at least I believe the board would like to give their opinions on the program.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Oh, Sharon
but
has
there's a
another-
hand up. Is that
Oh.
Stephanie? I can't
Nope.
read it from.
That's the one we just had.
Yeah, he just forgot to lower his hand. There we go. Okay.
I would just say quickly that I'm also concerned about, like, a few years down the road, or maybe sooner than that, that things tend to morph in the legislature. And that what we think we're doing now may say one thing and then get changed in the legislature to be something else or to add something else, and we're trapped. So I have some distrust about the whole thing.
All right, I want to thank everybody for participating today and remind
Yes.
everybody to send your email contact information to myself or Andrea so that we can provide you more information as it's continues to unfold. And Aaron, you had a couple of things you were going to send our way. That would be great. We'll look forward to sharing that with the group as well. Is there anything further before we fully wrap it up?
No,
Thanks.
good discussion.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
great.
thanks for
Thanks for coming, everybody.